In They Live, former Intercontinental Champion Rowdy Roddy Piper finds a pair of sunglasses that allow him to see the dark truths hidden behind society's flimsy facades. Today, the glasses are this YouTube video, and the dark truth is that in the realm of video games, everything is wrestling. And just like in They Live, this isn't a violent takeover because wrestling already won. Yakuza, Dead Rising, Spider-Man, Kirby, Skyrim, Devil May Cry, Pokemon, Watch Dogs, Mad Max, and even Final Fantasy have been infiltrated. If you want to escape wrestling's greasy grasp, you've got to go play some seriously dark, dour, punishing stuff like Sekiro. Wrestling shows up in places where it fits, and also places where you wouldn't expect to see it. It's the high fructose corn syrup of video games. Whether you like it or not, you're already immersed in wrestling. Today, we're gonna try to figure out how we got here. So please, put on the glasses.
Look! Look at them, they're everywhere!
When I was researching this video, I met wrestlers who owe their careers to video games and game developers who owe their careers to wrestling. There's some fundamental compatibility, because wrestling and video games are two art forms that live and die by their clarity. To understand what I mean, we need to go back to the beginning. A bit further. Keep going. Bit too far. Close enough. Pro wrestling as we know it bubbled up from the carnivals, an ultra-Darwinist free-for-all of entertainment where the best way to survive is to be bright and colorful, and most of all, immediately understandable. There can't be a single moment that goes by where the audience asks themselves, what's going on and why do I care? Because in that split second, they'll get up and go walk to another tent. Real, authentic wrestling wasn't that good at holding people's attention. The matches took too long and nobody got punched. To the untrained eyes in the upper bleachers, legitimate grapplers going at it was a visual mess. Just a pile of hairy meat laying on the ground for a couple hours. But carnival promoters, known for their integrity and unwavering rectitude, refused to alter the rules. I'm just kidding, they started faking the fights. Promoters incorporated theatrical elements and choreography. The wrestlers made their motions bigger, simpler, and more readable. They introduced clarity. Real wrestling morphed into live-action cartoon fighting, and that cartooniness extended to the characters and stories as well. Heroes were homely everymen or humbly handsome. Villains were snarling menaces, preening snobs, or sometimes just not from around here. Yeah, wrestling has a complicated and sad relationship with racism, xenophobia, and homophobia. Wrestling builds its characters out of broad strokes and cultural shorthands, even when those shorthands are really shitty. That's not unique to American wrestling. No matter where it goes, that reductive accessibility is part of what makes wrestling successful. After World War II, it migrated to Japan, where it got very, very popular. People would tune in every week to watch Rikidozan vanquish Western invaders in the ring. And if we fast forward a few years from there, we get to the first wrestling games. Wrestling was still a big deal in the 70s and 80s as Japan was becoming a juggernaut of game development. The first batch of games used stand-ins for the era's greats and did their best to recreate the in-ring competition. But in the late 80s, something important happened. The action and archetypes of wrestling tumbled out of the ring and started to become just a part of games. 1987's Double Dragon is the first place I noticed wrestling moves in a non-wrestling game. These big beefy dudes will pick you up, suplex you, and then hit you with a big ol' crossbody. It's a small reference to the world of wrestling, but it's important. The wrestler is a universal shorthand for someone who's bigger than you, stronger than you, and thanks to their superior grappling skills, very dangerous to be close to. Because arcade games are designed to be played sans tutorial, the skill set of enemies needs to be telegraphed instantly. Instead of inventing that clarity of purpose, they just borrowed it from wrestling. The wrestler-type baddie is an action game trope that lives on to this day. It was the wise folks at Capcom who said, hey, what if we also let the player pile drive some gormless fools onto the sidewalk? Mike Hagar was a playable grappler in 1989's Final Fight. In the lore of the game, he's a retired pro wrestler who's using his lariats and suplexes to clean up the streets. The moves don't fit the environment where they're happening, but that's part of the appeal.
I think it's the element of danger, or simulated danger. That's that's the art of professional wrestling, is making something seem deadly, or something that a normal person could not withstand.
This is Excalibur, a retired wrestler and current commentator for AEW. He thinks wrestling can hit even harder when it happens where it doesn't belong.
That's why it's so appealing, is because it looks just positively brutal. When you see it in the ring, it's being performed in kind of a safe space, so to speak. But once you remove it from the confines of a professional wrestling ring, it seems to be even more brutal. It kind of turns it up.
It's just really damn appealing to watch somebody do professional athlete shit in the wrong context. That's why Reebok ran an entire ad campaign about Terry Tate, the office linebacker. He's a linebacker in your office. Over time, the need to provide a narrative justification for why these characters are busting out wrestling stunts just kind of went away. Lil Leon Kennedy's never stepped foot in a wrestling ring, but he loves to suplex a zombie. It doesn't make logical sense, but it unquestionably belongs there. Because wrestling and games grew up under similar circumstances. Wrestling maneuvers, even when divorced from their in-ring context, are a perfect fix to one of game development's greatest challenges. That old holy grail, readability. Whether it's low-res pixel art or 4K spectacle, game developers need to convey complex actions on a screen that could be across the room or just 4 inches wide. There needs to be a clarity of motion, but that's a problem that wrestlers have already solved. For the benefit of the back row, wrestlers turn themselves into animated characters. They move in a way that prioritizes anticipation, readability, and weight. All things that game animators pay attention to and incorporate into their own work.
It's over the top, it's larger than life. They're doing normal things, but the way that they present it to you, they're projecting from the front row to the top of the arena.
Zach Lowry was the lead animator on Saints Row 3 and 4, and the games have got some wrestling in them.
And as an animator, especially in games, you need to make sure that it's really clear what the motion is, that someone, if it's a multiplayer game, that someone can read the action that's coming and they can react to it. So I think it's the magnification of reality.
Magnifying reality can make just about any action more readable. To do that, wrestlers and game developers can use a powerful tool, and I'm just about to tell you what it is. Get ready. Anticipation.
One of the main principles of animation is anticipation, right? You really want to set up the move before it happens. And you can connect that to pro wrestling in so many different ways, whether it's a simple punch or Razor Ramon throwing the guy between his legs and throwing his arms out, and everybody knows, oh, here comes the Razor's Edge, right? And you're waiting for it, and you're waiting for it.
If you're making a game and you're looking for a combat maneuver that's satisfying from up close or far away, sometimes you just need to hop in the mocap suit and do some DDTs, which is exactly what Zach did. There are wrestling games, there are non-wrestling games that borrow wrestling moves and archetypes, and then there are games that, despite not being wrestling, are wrestling. Maybe you've heard of Suda Goichi. He's developed some iconic, weird games over the years, but the one thing they all have in common is pro wrestling. When I asked Suda if he could ever make a game that didn't involve pro wrestling, he made this face.
自分の印みたいなものかもしれません、プロレスっていうのは。僕自身のアイデンティティって言ったらおかしいんですけども、僕の印みたいなものがプロレスなのかもしれないですね。今その質問を聞いてちょっと感じましたね。そういうものなんだなっていう。
Suda's first contact with wrestling was in 1981 when he tuned in to watch the in-ring debut of Tiger Mask, a manga character turned movie character turned real-life flesh wrestler. Suda stayed a casual fan throughout his childhood.
今度社会人になって東京に出てくるんですけども、高校卒業して。そこから今度はプロレスを直接見に行ける環境に入ったんですよね。そこからまた、プロレスゲームを作るまで、ずーっともうこんな感じですね。もう常に好きでした。人生の、80% ぐらい僕プロレスのこと考えてましたね。
Suda started hunting down all the wrestling that he could find from around the world. He leveraged all that knowledge in his first big gig in the games industry, writing for Fire Pro Wrestling 3, which is one of the deepest and most finicky wrestling sims out there. When Suda struck out with his own studio, Grasshopper Manufacture, he started making new types of games, but wrestling found its way into all of them. Killer 7 has Mask Day Smith, a luchador with a grenade launcher. No More Heroes stars Travis Touchdown, an obnoxious otaku assassin who also happens to take pro wrestling correspondence courses. And in Michigan, Report from Hell, Suda came pretty close to making a wrestling-free survival horror experience, but then he went and named all the characters after wrestlers. Suda puts a whole lot of pro wrestling out into the gaming world, but he also loves to see it pop up in other people's work. He's got the glasses on, and he likes what he sees.
やっぱりなんか、こう、プロレスって、こう仲間というか、プロレスファンって仲間のような感覚があるので、なんか身内の人が作ってるんじゃないかなみたいな、プロレスファン同士、何かこう、共鳴し合うものがあるような、なんかそんな感覚がちょっとありますね。はい。分かってるね、みたいな。
Wrestling gave games a helpful archetype, a host of readable moves, and an opportunity for fans to say, hey, I recognize that. But the love affair isn't one way, because games are also changing the landscape of real, actual, fake wrestling.
Damage from that. Oh! On the chair.
Yep, that's Excalibur. You're probably wondering how he ended up in this situation.
It's through video games, funnily enough. I was the co-webmaster of Wrastlin' Video Games, which is a video game website that covered wrestling video games specifically.
Through that website, he met Super Dragon, who invited him to come live in his garage and learn the art of wrestling. Excalibur went on to have an explosive career on the SoCal indie wrestling scene. He co-founded Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, a wrestling promotion that's mostly known for rapid-fire, shockingly athletic bouts. Traditional American wrestling moves at a more methodical, plodding pace, but PWG looks like a Tekken tournament if everybody picked King. The generation of wrestlers who came up through PWG grew up playing games, and a lot of them integrated into their in-ring styles and characters. Just like Suda-san and other game devs draw inspiration from wrestling, wrestlers are drawing inspiration from games. Kenny Omega, seen here wrestling in front of 43,000 people at the Tokyo Dome, named himself after the Omega Weapon, an optional super boss from the Final Fantasy series. He's borrowed moves from gaming's greats, and here he is dressed as Sans Undertale. On television. On purpose. Leva Bates has made a career out of cosplaying in-ring. Wrestlers like Sunbuster and Player Uno have literally paused wrestling matches to catch a break. WWE star and known gamer Xavier Woods recently announced that he's working with Riot Games to do game stuff. Then there's Kaiju Big Battel, whose monster fighting can be an overwhelming visual spectacle. They've given up the old school clarity of wrestling's good guys and bad guys, so to add that clarity back in, they leverage your auditory nostalgia, blasting video game classics over the PA system. I don't know if I'm supposed to cheer for the Freaky Bird or the Burger Man, but if they play Bowser's Castle theme when the bird appears, that helps clear things up. So games love wrestling, and wrestling loves games. Maybe it's not an invasion. Maybe it's a symbiotic relationship. The feeling is definitely there.
And Trent. Oh, good God! They were big in the video games tonight.
It's a new morning in gaming. What it really comes down to is our ability to accept that everything is wrestling.
Oh yeah!